as before. Let's spend a few moments calming the mind, just watching the mind. I'm sorry, watching the breath, not watching the mind, watching the breath. Alright, so from some of your questions, it becomes clear that this is really difficult. This is a very advanced practice. It is really as advanced as it gets. Well, there's some slightly more advanced, but actually that's one of the most advanced things you can do. So, of course, naturally it doesn't go as smoothly as you may expect. And also what's good to know is that things come up. When you meditate, things come up. Things that you didn't realize they were there. So certain emotions, feelings, strong feelings that maybe go back to when you were younger. Things come up because you were looking at your mind and suddenly these things that you weren't aware of, that maybe you subconsciously suppressed, your mind suppressed it, it's now coming up. And that is just natural, and that's a good thing. It's like when you wash your clothes, you want this stuff comes out. I mean, if you've got a shirt that's full of stains, but then the water remains clear, you keep adding washing powder or make the water warm or whatever, because you want things to come out. So likewise here, we want to recognize our mind. We know there are a lot of things in there, like things that we never looked at. Certain emotions, painful emotions, fear, like there's all sorts of things. So to actually allow them to come up, the problem is often that we're fearful of the fear, fearful of anger, fearful of aggression. That's just fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the painful. Then to be accepting of like whatever comes up, to allow it to come up. And even though meditation is on something else, and something unrelated comes up, well, don't worry. Great, no problem. Why not? If it comes up, then you deal with it then. And so, to address your questions, and I now need to make sure I remember all your questions. Well, for instance, someone said that there is no such a strong sense of self-cherishing. Like in comparison to other people, there's not such strong self-centeredness. That may well be true, of course. We can sometimes tell, oh, this person is more obsessed with themselves than I am. But it doesn't mean that there is no self-centeredness. We all have our own degree of like considering our happiness or what is mine to just be a little bit more important than that of others. It's not like we're like, even when we are giving and loving, we kind of expect something back. So unconditional is difficult. So it shows that there is something there. And the danger is if you just leave it, it could get stronger. Due to causes and conditions, it could actually grow stronger. So because of that, this is dangerous. We need to deal with it at some point. So to just kind of check, what is that I, like again and again, just check. And I took you right into the kind of most profound kind of meditation where it's either one or different, etc. So that's, like I said, it's quite advanced, but the Dalai Lama talks about it. I'm sure he felt that was necessary, so I just go along with the technique he taught, which is not, he didn't make it up, it comes actually from the Buddha himself. But he explains it in a way which is more accessible to us in the 21st century. So, therefore, things will come up, and you may feel miserable afterwards. You go, oh, that didn't go too well. I feel miserable now. Now, I don't know, I don't feel happy. I was peaceful before, and now the meditation destroyed my peace of mind. Well, actually, no, it just brought things up. It brought them to the surface, giving you the opportunity to deal with them. So it's actually good. So I always look at any meditation is good, however it went. So we may have certain expectations. Oh, I should be doing all. If you're a Buddha, then yes, then it'll go exactly as you want. But then you don't need to meditate. Okay, so it's not supposed to be like that way. Like you're totally focused. You do exactly. You get up and you're done. No, it's not going to work like that. That's like expecting when you exercise to be able to I don't know, do this very difficult yoga movement. Well, if you can do it, you don't need to practice it. You can just do it. If you can always do it, well then, you don't need to practice it. You can do it, right? But we still do it because we want to stretch those parts which become unstretched during the day, right? Like after you've done yoga, your body is in a certain state, but it goes back to a different state again. That's why you need to repeat it. You do it again and again. So likewise with our mind, we'll do it to make it a little bit more flexible. And then we need to do it again, we need to do it again, until we do it really right and everything works well and we're blissful, well then we reach the state we no longer have to do it. So therefore you may feel sometimes unwell during the meditation, but that's good. It means something is happening. And of course, the difficulty someone described, like for instance, it's not just with regard to the I, but also our relationship with other people. Like when they're there, their presence is not felt as strongly as their absence when one day they die. This sense of something missing, it's really strong. So what is that? Well, it's very complicated. It takes a while to get through this. The loss of another person. Sometimes that's scarier than ourselves dying, losing the people around. And I know with my mom, she's at an age now when suddenly people start going. They start dying. She goes to a funeral and then next week another one. Wow, and it's like, oh, it's scary. I get that. I get how my mom feels like, because these people give us a sense of identity. They're part of our own identity. The people around us, they're part of us, right? We're attached to the I, we're attached to them. And so suddenly that is gone. So from a Buddhist point of view, I mean, here of course the understanding of future lives is very helpful, which is hard to understand. Reincarnation is difficult. My take on it is like, there's 50% chance that there is and 50% chance there isn't. And to take that into consideration, to take the possibility and live as if, is just helpful. Whatever is the truth, to visualize, to imagine my actions have consequences, and so therefore to act accordingly if there really is future lives. Well, if there is future lives, then I'm at least prepared. And if there isn't, I die without any regret. Right? No need to get into this right now, future lives. But the point is that if there is future life, you'll meet those people again. You're just separated temporarily. Okay? If there is heaven, you'll probably meet them there. And if there's nothing afterwards, well, it doesn't matter really. Right? So, but also to become aware of the fact that whatever comes together will separate one day. And to expect that right from the beginning. The things, so this is understanding of impermanence. Right from the beginning, and at all times to be aware, this may be the last time we meet. So let's make the fullest of it, right? Without any expectations, it may be the last time, enjoy it, but also be prepared for having to separate from those people. But then we meet new people also. So we have this attachment, of course, towards one. We want to hold it, but that's like holding on to quicksand. I mean, actually, our relationship with each person, every time we meet them, we have a unique meeting with them. It's never the same. So we can't even hold on to those meetings. Every moment is unique. So enjoy it, that moment, but allow it to go. Allow it to go. One day it'll be gone, and one day we all be gone, right? But the way I look at it in terms of reincarnation, we also meet again. You meet the same people again. So I say this jokingly, there is no love on first sight. Because the people, you're just reconnecting with them, right? You feel like, sometimes you meet people and you know I'm going to marry this person. From a Buddhist point of view, yeah, you were probably married to them 5 times in a row, so you're good at it. And you're just kind of meeting again, right? So that's the beauty. We meet and re-meet the people again and again. We get again and again together. And there's so much that speaks for reincarnation. So much. I mean, the likes and dislikes we're born with. We are fearful of certain people. No reason. Well, maybe we had some interaction with them so that we're fearful of them now. Or we just like someone right from the beginning. Well, because we probably spent a lot of time with them. So we meet people again and again. So it's like at nighttime we go to sleep and the day's over. That day we will never relive. And the situation we have with people we know, we will not relive. It's like they have died when they fall asleep, and the next day they're slightly different. It's different, it's never the same. Similar, but never the same. So if we understand that, we don't try to hold on to, and then if they pass on, okay, something new will come. Right? There's nothing to hold on to. Our holding on to things, it's like holding on to sand and trying to make something solid. There's nothing solid there. Okay? So I think that's really important. It's really important to become aware of that. Okay. And then another question. So this is really impermanence. That's understanding impermanence, the constant change, nothing's ever the same. And just letting go and enjoying it as long as it lasts, but to also be aware it won't, right? Because there's this verse, whatever comes together will disperse. Every meeting ends with a separation. What else? I don't remember the exact word. So every meeting ends with a separation. Every coming together ends with dispersing. Everything that rises will come down. So it's true, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened again. It happens over and over again. All right. So that may be a way to deal with this a little bit better. And with regard to the self, of course, once we've understood how the self really exists, we won't have those issues. But until then, it'll be there. And to watch it and get to know it better. The grieving, also to watch it, what happens exactly. And just get to know yourself better. And then you can deal with it in the moment, and you learn how to let go. Okay, that would be one thing, but it's much more complicated than that, and unfortunately we don't have time to go into more details on this. And you're welcome to ask again if it's not clear yet. And then also someone said, well, maybe there's a self, this whole idea that the self cannot be found. Well, maybe there is a self that does exist, and I just cannot see it because there's a lot I cannot see. Very classic question, very classic comment. Okay, that's fine. Like I said, first of all, I cannot see it. All right. Okay. Now, if there's a self that I cannot see, that's not the one I'm attached to. That's not the one I'm attached to. So even if there was that one that I can't see, that I cannot perceive at all, it doesn't matter, because that's not the one that drives me getting angry, getting aggressive, that drives me, that the one that makes me jealous, that is responsible for being jealous, etc. I have no connection to it. So even if it exists, it's got nothing to do with me. It doesn't give me any grief. What gives me grief is my perception of an I, which definitely clearly appears. That clearly appears. That's the one I'm attached to. So if I find that that doesn't exist, then the attachment has nothing to hold on to. My anger has nothing to hold on to. And if there's still some invisible one, what do I care? My problem is solved. Right? And it still would be like, what is that self? What is that? Of course, the mind exists conventionally, not intrinsically, and the body does too. And one thing I wanted to mention anyway, that there are different levels of no self. There are different levels of no self. There's a coarser level of no self, and then there's a subtler version of that. How can I explain this? This is a little harder to understand. It's a bit like, sometimes I think of, for instance, when you see from afar, right? You see from afar, it's actually a person. It's actually a person. So here we'd use a person, but in a different way. But I misperceive this person. I misperceive it. First I think it's a stone. I just think it's a stone. Right? A moving stone or whatever. Like, no, there's someone standing there actually, but I misperceive what is actually there as a person, but I don't see that. I misperceive it as a stone. And then I look a little closer and I realize, oh, it's not a stone, it's a living being. Okay? So I refute, I negate that this object is a stone, and now I perceive it to be a living being. Just a living being. But I don't know, I think, maybe I'm thinking, okay, it's a living being, I'm thinking it's a dog, for instance. Pardon? Or I don't know, whatever, a kangaroo or something. It's like from afar. So I know it's a living being, but now I'm thinking, it's an animal. And then when I get closer, I realize, oh no, it's neither a stone nor an animal, it's actually a human being. So if you take the person being bent over, for instance, bent over. So first like a stone, when you get closer, oh no, it's an animal, oh no, it's actually a human being. So you see, every time you come closer, and so you know a little bit more about this. So first the coarse idea of something inanimate, such as a stone, that is negated. And then, all right, animals, there's so many varieties of animals, and I realize, oh no, that's still a misperception, it's not an animal. And then I know that specifically it's a human being. So similar here, when we try to look at the self, we negate different things. Initially, there's a sense there's a permanent, unchanging I, a kind of totally separate kind of I, right? We sometimes have this sense of like totally a separate, permanent I. Let's say permanent, like the I yesterday is the same today. Sometimes we feel like, oh, I never change. Okay? Or the sense with another person, oh, that's the same guy. Oh, he's exactly the same as he was last year, or whatever. So in that moment, there's a strong perception of a permanent, unchanging person or unchanging I, in my own case. Now, through meditation, initially I get rid of that. I understand that is impossible. Such an I is just not possible. So I can initially reduce that. So, the stone, here I get rid of my perception of that as a stone, of that particular object. But then I take it further. All right, so the self exists as an impermanent entity, changes all the time. And it's not totally like disconnected to body and mind, but it's connected to it. It's the controller of body and mind. And then I look at that. So it is changing. It's not like totally separate, like permanent, but it is the controller. It controls mind and body. And then I look again and I find, oh no, but that's impossible. That's impossible. but they still feel there's something intrinsic. It's not a controller as such, but there's still something within a person that I can call an I. That's the last thing I get rid of. You see, so there are different levels. You're like peeling off an onion peel. First, a coarser kind of wrong perception, and then you get a little closer, right? So the person doesn't exist as a permanent, totally separate entity, but kind of connected to mind and body, but yet a kind of a controller of mind and body. And once you understand, no, that kind of controller can't be there, there's still a sense there's something intrinsic in mind and body that makes it the self. And only when you've negated that, then you've really understood emptiness, the emptiness of the person. And then, once you can do that, and the Dalai Lama mentions it here, once you can do that, then no matter which other phenomenon you focus on, you also see that, oh, there's nothing intrinsic in this that makes it a cup. But if you can't do that, if you, for instance, understand, okay, the self doesn't really exist the way it appears, but this really is really a microphone, as in, like, there's something within it that makes it a microphone, then your sense, the self that you are negating, is not yet inherent existence. It's not yet what you negate with regard to all phenomena. It's more of a coarser level, okay? And so the Dalai Lama mentions it here, when he says that if you have a sense, okay, the I am looking for cannot be found, there's the initial sense of an I, all right, that actually doesn't make sense. When you kind of get rid of a coarser sense of an I, in your meditation you go, wow, it's not there, okay? But then you turn towards the table and it still appears the same way, there's no change, as in like, there's no change in terms of your perception of that, then you know you still haven't reached the subtlest level. Okay? So therefore, there's this verse by Nagarjuna in a text called Precious Garland, when it says, as long as there's grasping at the body, at the aggregates, there's grasping at the self. So the aggregates as like being something other than the person, so whether it's the table or mind and body, as long as there's a sense there's still something intrinsic there, then you also still have that sense with regard to the person. Why? Because they don't differ. They don't differ, it's just a different basis. But what you're negating, some intrinsic nature, something within the object that is independent of our mind. If you've negated that with regard to the person, but it still appears with regard to other phenomena, then you've not negated enough with regard to the person. You've negated a lot, that's a huge step, but you still need to go deeper. So with a person, because we're so obsessed with the person, like it's so strong with the I, over many, many lifetimes, the thing is like, it's not just in this lifetime, it's over many lifetimes. Children are born with that. Also child, although they first have a hard time with like I and others, etc. So it's not, it gets reduced a little bit, but sooner or later it comes back. So it is there. It may temporarily not arise because the mind is subtler, but when the coarse mind gets stronger, definitely. And from the beginning there's definitely a sense, when they have twins and one twin punches the other, right? They punch the other, they don't punch themselves. So there's a sense of that one and me, right? Like sometimes twins, even in the womb, I've seen having like a little altercation. So there's definitely a sense, I don't like him, get away. And then of course it continues once they're born. So there's definitely, but it's not as pronounced yet. But it's not about like keeping those children in a state that it doesn't come through. You can't avoid that, eventually it will come through. Because it's been there with us. We're so used to it since beginning this time, basically. You can't pause at the beginning. So it is very, very strong, and it takes a long time to reduce it. And we all have a certain sense of a self, and like I said, it just takes time. And again, I don't want to discourage you. If stuff happens during the meditation, that's actually good. And there's a lot of work to be done. Like they say, it takes many, many lifetimes. But What else is there to do? Right? I mean, so, but also someone brought up karma. Someone asked about karma. Now, because talking about the person, we need to bring in the idea of where do our experiences come from? We need to explain those, right? So, and karma, different examples I use, but sometimes these analogies can be misleading. Can be very misleading. We easily misunderstand karma as also some separate entity, as like a separate entity of like punishment or reward or something. Okay? That has a lot to do with, of course, the system we were raised in, because of course a theistic system oftentimes emphasizes, and you can have theistic systems that don't talk about God punishing or rewarding you. In Hinduism you still have karma, but you also have kind of deities. So it's not necessary, but the Abrahamic faith, they do suggest that someone is actually rewarding or punishing you. Okay. Now in Buddhism it's not about reward or punishment. It's a law of nature. Okay, so let's say, let's say this is a crystal stick. I'm very attached to it. It's a beautiful crystal stick. Okay? Alright. So, there's the law of gravity. I drop it, it breaks. Is the law of gravity punishing me? No. No, no one is punishing me. It's just the law of nature. I drop it, it falls to the floor, right? There's no punishment, or if it falls somewhere else, there's a reward. No, it's physics, it's the law of physics. It didn't fall on it fell on the cloth because I slightly kind of twisted my arm when I dropped it, and so it fell on the cloth. It's a law of nature. Whatever natural law, I mean, gravity is one of them in play, but you know, in one case it fell onto the cloth, it didn't break. That was not a reward. It's just the natural law. And it works with a consistency. And it just is. There's no one controlling it. So karma works like that. It's just a natural law. As in like, my mind, certain thoughts arise, right? Negative thoughts. And they motivate me to insult another person. So I insult another person. I give something out. So like I drop something, right? There's a movement, there's a mental movement resulting in an action. And then that action, because of our interconnectedness, it comes back to me. Sooner or later, it comes back to me. It's a bit like when you release a chemical into a river, you go further down, you drink the water, you get sick, right? It's like, because of the interconnectedness, it comes back to you. So you can't escape it, basically. And that's what karma is. It's just a law of nature. It's not like someone going, I got that one, I saw that. All right, get a black point here, right? And now's the time to punish that person. No. It's just a law of nature. You know, if you drink from the wrong tap, you get sick. If you give something out that is suffering, it'll come back to you in a similar form. It may even get stronger over time. It may become stronger. Also, positive actions, they become stronger. You do some small, tiny thing with the motivation to benefit someone, and then over time it just grows stronger. Such as in nature, that also happens. Like you plant a seed and you get a whole tree. Plant a tiny thing and it grows into something greater. It can be enhanced. So the thing is, our mind, we think things all the time, and if it's strong enough, it gets us to act. So just from the point of view of our mind, it changes the mind. The moment there's a harmful thought, the mind is slightly changed. So we call that imprint. An imprint is just some residue is left in the mind. And so then that leads to a certain experience sometime later. But it may also